So today it was a question of one hump or two, and you voted two humps. So we have our Bactrian camel. Typically you've chosen the more complicated one, but it's more a question of dressing. So actually the shapes are very simple, and it should be good fun to make. Again, you can go for any colour you like. I over speculated with the amount of clay I mixed last time, so I've got these two great tods of brown here that you can have a play with. Well, I'm going to certainly be doing that. So I'm going to build everything in this kind of, well, literally camel colour, and then add this darker camel colour, I suppose, to the mix, and add that hair on later on. So thank you for joining in yesterday, and you saw the draw. Having said we don't do inanimate objects and places, looks like we are, because the hilarious Alex Pohl decided to put in hammer and tongs, and I am a slave to suggestions, and I'm very compliant, and I'm going to have to work out on Friday what to do with hammer and tongs. So that should be hilarious. So we'll see how we get on with that one. Yeah, should be interesting, I think. So I think we're going to get started, and I've got all this clay here to play with, so let's not take up too much of your Saturday afternoon. The weather is still against me for driving people indoors. It's still gloriously hot out there, and being a bald ginger bloke, I'm rather like one of the worst X-Men, really. I'm brilliant at absorbing lots of vitamin D, but I just go very red then, or very freckly. I can grow freckles like nobody's business. So yes. So I'm just pressing a big tod of clay. So I'm going to tear this in half, and I might not use all of this, but this is going to be the body of my camel. And lovely, there's lots of you joined in. Andy Greenacre saying, making outside on the gin deck. To have a gin deck. I haven't really got a deck at the moment. Some old slabs, and I've just covered them up and made a new, impromptu cold frame for my ceilings. Some of them of which have been eaten by wood lice. I'm not sure how to combat that. Polly or Jolly Allotment might know how to combat that organically, or short of. I don't really want to stamp on them or do anything terrible like that. So nothing wrong with freckles. They're in these days. Well, I've always been a fan, which is good because I'm kind of stuck with them, really. Yeah. So I've got this bit of clay. I'm warming it up, getting it nice and warm. Now, by making it into a block of colour like this, it does sometimes make your life a little bit more difficult. Just in that it's a bit more physically demanding to squash it around and get it warm. As I say, you could use a hairdryer. When I was mixing up these lumps of clay, I did actually use a hairdryer just to help me. And you can actually use a pasta machine as well. If you've got a pasta machine that you don't use and you really think you're not going to revisit pasta, I suggest you do, because it is a brilliant thing to make. But yes, it's a great thing for marbling clay, using up those scrap bits as well. And I promise next week I will do a thing on what to do with your fiddly bits of clay and how to turn it into something interesting as well. So what I'm going to do is make the body of my camel, and I'm going to start with a ball. And then I've kind of made a bit of a pasty shape, or a half circle shape. So I'm keeping a little bit of bulk into the body there. And I've made a kind of, a mini pasty, a party pasty if you like. And I'm going to squeeze from one end, choose which end I want the bottom to be, so I'm going to make that rounder. And then I'm going to squeeze out a length of clay, making like a giant kind of brown tadpole, like so, and I'm going to make a neck. You can see on there. I'm going to add this kind of wattly bit, the hairy bit, later on. So we're making a stomach at the moment. Looks like a duodenum or a stomach at the moment. That's the kind of thing we're making. Well, I'm really pleased that so many of you have turned up, actually. This is very nice, encouraging. Thank you. So I'm going to make the neck a little bit longer than I need it to be, because I'm going to then put another bend in it. And this is going to be the head. I'm going to add a few extra shapes onto the head, but I want a long nose, as you can see on there, look. So I might flatten that and make it a little bit more bulbous. As I say, this is a Bactrian camel. So we've got the two humps. So There we go, you can start to tease out the neck a bit more. And the head doesn't really come that far above the humps, if at all. But I want a nice long nose, and all I'm going to do there is just on the head, I'm also going to just push a little ridge. I might just squeeze it a little bit like that. I don't know if you can see that. And not quite making a monobrow, but kind of making a ridge that will tell me where the eyes are going to go. And we're going to add some extra clay on there in a minute. So I'm just going to smooth this around a little bit. And I'm really not worrying about getting it too smooth, but I'm just trying to make sure the shapes are all in there. And it looks a bit like a dodo at the moment. Lovely. Like that. So I've essentially pinched out one end, and then I've bent it over again, and then I've just fold it over like so. So lovely. So there we go. I'm just going to show you that. Looks a bit like a drumstick, yeah. There we go. So we're getting a nice cartoon shape. Really, it's a bit Pink Panther-y actually. And in our studio, the studio Ardman, where I work quite a lot, we used to have the brilliant Richard Williams, who was the lead artist and an animator on those animated sequences for all the old Pink Panther movies and stuff as well. So incredible artist and an animator, and yeah, a real hero as well. So I'm going to make the humps now. So I've got a nice neck and the start of a head. I'm going to pinch out the top and tease out some humps, some lumps, some camel lumps to make the twin humps of the Bactrian camel. Now you can go as outrageous as you like. Get your finger between them, squeeze them out, tease them and squeeze them until you've got a nice big pair of humps on the back. Now some camels have floppy humps and they fold over on themselves, so you could play with that if you like. I'm going to go with quite perky humps, I think. This is the way to go, I think. And squeezing around. And again, trying to make sure that you've got a bit of a round tummy on it as well. Not it to be too thin. Something like that. So we've made quite a complicated shape actually, but unwittingly, by concentrating on one bit at a time and teasing those shapes out, we've kept quite a naturalistic shape actually. So there's a little bit of anatomy going on in there as well, really. There we go. So just squeezing and pushing the clay around till I'm kind of happy with the shapes. So that is stage one, which is probably the most complicated bit actually. There we go. Feeling quite happy with that, so I'm just going to give it a bit of a revolve so you can see what's happening. There we go. Quite pleased with that. Got a nice big nose, a nice long nose, and that gives us plenty of room to put the muzzle on and put a bottom lip on as well. So we'll put a bottom lip along there as well. So I'm just going to push in a little bit of a roof to the mouth, but we don't really need to. It's just so I can fit that bottom jaw in a bit more snugly, not slugly. We don't want slugs. There we go. I've got lots in my garden actually. I found a whole pile of nest of leopard slugs in some bricks that I've been planning to use for ages to make a path, and they're all hiding in there, and all sorts of spiders. Shona, hello, good afternoon. Excellent. There we go, all my favourites are in. Lovely. Nice round hump shapes, and I'm going to leave that there, like a lying down, like a nativity scene for a camel. Yes, the herd has grown somewhat there. There's quite a lot going on in there. So I'm going to tease off a few sections of clay to make the legs, and could be a Loch Ness monster as well. Yeah, you could absolutely turn it into that. So I'm just going to squeeze out this length of clay into a thinner piece, and that way I can portion off a bit better as well. As I say, you could use these basic shapes to make all sorts of different stuff as well, so you don't have to stick to the brief. It's just to give you the confidence to have a play yourselves, really. So I think that's probably enough clay, so I'm going to tear off that, and I've got this big old lump for later on. I'll probably use some of that for the tail, so I'm going to halve this and halve it again, quarter it if you like. There we go. And add an adder to the fishbowl. Right. Yeah, that would be nice actually. Yes. I first saw an adder when I was, well, it wasn't until I was 30. It was on my 30th birthday. I was in Cornwall. And I was on a Cornish coastal path, and an adder crossed my path through the gorse and heather and the thrift. I thought it was a good portent for that year, really. 30 was a good year actually. It's great. Lovely. So I've got 4 roughly equal size lumps of clay. Again, party sausages if you like, cocktail sausages. And what I'm going to do is get a little bit of length into them, so I'm going to roll them a little bit longer, like so. And then what I'm going to do is push down on one end and make the bottom of the foot nice and flat. They've got these really lovely big camel feet and toes, and I'm going to start to pinch in the middle to make the foot come out and make a little bit of a knee. In fact, I'm then going to just almost like an hourglass shape. So I'm going to make it go in at the middle and then go out again to make, this could be the back leg or the front leg. This might be the front leg. I'm going to go for front legs for the first ones, just to make it a nice simple shape. So you've got like a kind of hourglass shape, like so. Could we do bees? We could certainly do bees. I will add them to the goldfish bowl for next Friday's draw. And then I'm going to take that top of that shape and make that drumstick shape for the upper leg, like so. Now I'm going to take a cocktail stick as a sculpting tool, and I'm going to cut into the front of the foot like so, and then put that down there, and then tease out the camel toe. So we need 4 camel toes. In fact, we need 8 camel toes, so we need nice big toes like so on the hoof. There we go, something like that. So a nice simple shape. And you want it flat where it's going to meet onto the body, so it's going to reach on like so. Now you could make a very leggy one, or a shorter one. You could make a baby one if you like. That'd be cool as well. There we go. So I'm going to make a second one. Not sure what you're laughing at there, Sir Westwood. Just enjoying yourself. Step in the right direction. Thank you, Andy. Now you can get out as well. And flatten that again and start to pinch out the knee, up to the knee, the foreleg, and then I'm going to just, with that rounded top, flatten it again to make the upper leg as well. Nice simple shapes. And again, use that cocktail stick and push it into the clay like so, and then you can start to tease out, wait for it, the camel toe. There we go, we've got 2 nice big squodgy shapes. Lovely. It's very hard not to say that really when making a camel. So there we have a pair of camel legs, and make that just a little bit thinner so it matches. Trying to get them the same size each time is rather tricky. Lovely. Now I'm going to make the back legs, which are similar in fashion, but the drumstick is going to be a bit fatter on the top as well. So again, warming up the clay, lengthening it. Hello there, plastiline Nologia. That's not very easy to say, but we've chatted online a bit on Instagram, and you do some amazing work with clay as well. That's really nice to see. Not sure how your clay differs from mine. It might be similar. So you get American clay is very different, and Italian clay is very different. In fact, most plastilines or plasticines are more like plastilina, which is a lot softer and oil based, one that you can actually melt in a pan as well. British clay doesn't really do that. It just kind of gets a bit sweaty and then sets fire if you try and melt it. So as I say, don't do that if you can help it. So this time I'm making that drumstick shape, so very similar again, but I'm actually going to bend it in the middle like that to make the knee shape. A backwards knee is what quadrupeds have. And there we go. And I'm going to add the toe into the middle, like so. Hello Turgworks, how are you doing? Trying to catch up. We've not missed too much. We've made a kind of stomach shape by starting off with a round ball and then pulling out the neck and turning that, pinching it out and then bending it over and making a muzzle, and then we pinched out 2 humps, and our legs are like kind of almost hourglass shapes, or like chicken drumsticks, and then we've teased out these toes. So I'm just making the back legs as we speak. Hopefully if I've got time, I think it'll probably be tomorrow morning, I will put this video up alongside the video from yesterday as well, the sloth video as well. I got a little bit carried away with what I was doing last night and didn't have time to do it, but it will pop up in the next few days. And I will promise later in the week that I will catch up with some of those other videos. I'm going to have to reshoot some of them, unfortunately, because the camera dropped on one, which is the seal one, unfortunately. So sorry, Lizzie, if you're watching. And a couple of the others, the Pandas ones, the actual spare camera wasn't quite in shot, so I was actually displaying everything off camera and just to the live broadcast, so you couldn't actually see what I was doing, which is no good at all. So yeah, still learning. By the end of this, I'm going to be absolutely amazing, and then I'll have no audience. Hopefully you'll all carry on watching. I'll do some more live broadcasts and do some other stuff as well. Hoping next week to do, as I say, some more complicated bits and pieces as well, alongside. If this wasn't enough work, I think I'm going to try and do some more stuff for the more advanced model maker as well, which would be really lovely to do. Can we see each leg in profile? Yep, so we have a very slender front leg, and if I just turn that around, thanks for the prompt, Andy, that's always useful. There we go, so it's almost like a hourglass shape. And as I say, we've got the toes on there as well. That's the front ones. So I'll just turn them around like that so you can see them. And then the back legs are the same, but I've just bent it in the middle to give a backwards knee as well. So there we go. So actually you've been asking for the draw, has come up with some quite complicated stuff. Next week is again quite complicated. So we're starting the week with tigers, which will be rather good. Lots of patterning on there as well, which will be really nice to do. And then I think it's grizzly bears. Then we've got tapirs in the mix, so we've got black and white. I'm not quite decided yet as to whether I'll do a Brazilian tapir or a Malay tapir yet, but we shall see. Quite different in shape and size as well. So we have back legs, and they look rather like that. So I'm just going to, again, if you haven't done the toes, just get a cocktail stick and split down the front of the hoof like so, and then tease out those toes. And that might be the last time I have to say camel toe. There we go. Lovely. And just make sure it's all nice and squashy shapes as well. Lovely. So we're ready to attach those to the body. So I would probably start. I tend to start with the back legs. I'm not quite sure why. I'm right-handed, so it might be that I find it easier to get the back legs on first. Gives me a bit more space. So I'm pushing them on, and then I'm really squodging and squidging that clay around and pushing it, blending it in, getting a nice blend on there. As I say, funny and thummy is good. We like that. Lovely. And I'm going to work with the inside of the leg with the tool. You could use the paintbrush handle or a pencil or a cocktail stick, or if you've got smaller fingers, you could certainly use your fingers as well. There's no real hard and fast rules with this. Gromit in London has joined us. Good afternoon, Gromit. Hope you're well. Excellent. Lovely. So that is our back leg on, the first one. Now if you make them chunkier, you might not actually need to put cocktail sticks in, but it might be a good idea if you can fit them in, put some cocktail sticks in the legs as well, just to sturdy them up a little bit. But we'll see how we go. I might be alright with this one. Yet to see. So again, smoothing the clay round, giving it a nice wide stance so it's not too slender. There we go. And again, working around the inside of the legs, the leg pits, and making sure it's nicely joined together. We don't want it to fall apart later on. While it's warm, it's very likely that it will stay together. We get a bit floppy, and then it's going to fall apart later on. So make sure you've got it nicely attached at this stage. So again, the front legs, if you offer up your camel to the table and then set the height, then there we go, this should look rather nice, I think. And again, smoothing the clay. And I've got quite warm hands, so that's good. Great for this kind of thing anyway. Not so great if you're making pastry. There we go. So work your way around, and again, inner leg. Make sure it's all nicely attached. The animal age, that's from Otto. I must have missed the first bit. I'm not sure how old this camel is, but it's definitely an adult camel. Lovely. So I'm going to add that other front leg, squeeze the clay, smooth it in. And next week I'm hoping to get out my first newsletter as well with some tips on sculpting and little bits and pieces as well, little projects, called the Plasticine Post. So if you go to jimparkyn.com, you can sign up, subscribe to the Plasticine Post, and I will try and get something out next week. I've got a few plans for what I can do for that. Just trying to give you some more resources that you can play with when we're not on air, and it's not just videos as well, so it should be a bit more interesting stuff. Little bits about what I've been up to, projects, hopefully maybe some projects that I've worked on in the past, some little behind the scene pictures and things like that. So yeah, all that kind of thing really. Try and give you some content. There you go, just your feet. And I think that's going to be okay. I'm going to let that sit actually. I'm not going to worry about putting cocktail sticks in today. I think that looks fine without. What I'm going to do now is take some of this body colour again, and I'm going to add two almost, I'd say, tic-tac sized or baked bean sized balls of clay. So you want to make some kind of round, maybe even rabbit poo sized. Bet you can make a character with your eyes closed. Which one would that be? I have done that in the past actually. I can make a morph blindfolded, or a Shaun the Sheep blindfolded, or a grommet actually. So I do like morph actually. Morph is one of the most intuitive sculpts you can do. So I'm making, if you see on my camel there, they've got quite wide skull around the eyes, so I'm adding some kind of boggy eye bits on the side which look a bit peculiar at this stage, but I'm adding those on, smoothing them in, and that's just going to give them a wider brow, and the eyes will look further apart as well, like so. And just squeeze those in. Can you see the back legs again, please? Yeah, of course. Let me just put the eye in there, the eye section, and then eye socket. I'll just put one on the other side in a minute, but I'll show you that back leg. So the back legs are like that. We've bent the carrot shape, or the kind of carrots on the mind. We haven't really done carrots today. Just that hourglass shape, and bent it in half. So it looks almost the same on the top as it does on the bottom. And giving it a bit of a wide stance to make sure it will stand up. Now the head looks a little peculiar at this stage, but we're going to put the other eye socket on, smooth that in, push it on, and it looks a little peculiar at this stage. And when I was doing it, I was thinking, I'm not sure how this is going to quite work out. So obviously I always make a test sculpt to make sure it's doable. and yeah, I think it's actually quite nice. So there we go. So I'll smooth that in, and I'm going to put a bit of a jaw on as well. So I'm going to put a couple of pea-sized balls of clay underneath that. Now, you don't necessarily have to do that. You can keep the shape simpler if you like. I think that just gives it a little bit of a kind of, they've got a little bit of a cheek like that. You can see that. And again, I'm going to smooth that in. And that's where they do a lot of chewing, so they spend an awful lot of time eating rough grasses and quite difficult to process vegetation, so they've got this good pouchy muscular cheeks. And I might just use the tool to go around a little bit and give it a bit of definition, make sure it's all nicely blended. So I hope you've all had nice sunny afternoons and mornings. I got to go out into Bath this morning to go and pick up bits and pieces, which was nice. Saw a few people at a distance, which was encouraging to see as well. It was really nice. It's a very good farmers market in Bath, and I got to see some friends who are cheesemakers, and yeah, so we went to see them. So it was really lovely to spend some time at a distance talking to my cheesy friends, and just smooth it all the way around. And I'm going to put a bottom jaw on, which is a nice simple shape as well. It looks a little peculiar, but they are quite an odd looking animal really. It looks quite alien. So it's something like an Avatar or something like that. So I'm going to put a carrot. We're going to make a carrot. So I'm going to make a small carrot like that, and I'm going to just flatten it a little bit. In fact, I'm going to make a kind of tadpole shape with it. I'm going to keep the round head part a bit rounder and then press it down so it looks a little bit like that. So it is a bit like a brown tadpole. And I'm going to put that on the bottom of the jaw like so. There we go, you can see it from underneath. And smooth that in. There we go. That's looking rather nice. Good chewing jaw underneath, like so. So I'll just give you that view again. So really, it's got a nicely splayed eyes, like that. So quite a lot going on in there really. And the final thing is 2 ears. They haven't really got very big ears, so little tiny fat carrots, about the size of a pea, even a petit pois, and we've made a tiny little carrot like that. So I'm going to make 2 of those to make them the same size. And then the last thing to do before we start putting fur on, and the eyeballs, is a tail as well. We need a tail. So 2 little carrots, and give them a squidge, and then put them on behind the head, behind the eye bulge, like that. So again, really make sure they're nicely worked on. Use a cocktail stick or paintbrush or sculpting tool, whatever you've got to hand, and get that sculpted in. So we've done most of the complicated bits already. So carrots are back, yes, Shona. Shona's a big carrot fan. Lovely, and I'm going to use one of my other tools to add a little bit of a dent in there to make the inside of the ear. So, trying to show you a few different techniques here. Lovely. And we need one more ear, so do that on the other side. And then we can get into the texturing bit very shortly, which is always good. So just make sure you're working all the way around and make sure all these elements are nicely stuck together. Obviously you can spend a bit more time than I'm doing, really trying to show you as quickly as possible what we're up to. we go. So it's starting to really look like a camel now. Quite pleased with that. And it should be quite a calm thing as well. I actually quite enjoyed the time in the clay cave making these for you guys. And thank you so much for all the feedback as well. It's always really encouraging to see that you're enjoying it and how much you're kind of taking it on to the next stage. Some of you are making animations. People put sloths in trees yesterday, which is really nice to see. So, so I'm really loving seeing that. And yeah, the more you share, the more I'll do. Absolutely fantastic. And please do subscribe to the YouTube channel where you can see all these videos, the full-length videos. I will put the speeded up ones on Instagram Live. And I'll try and make as much content for you as I can, really. Lovely. So I think I'm going to make some nostrils next. So I'm going to take a tool, could use a cocktail stick just as easily, and make those nostrils. So I'm going to put one on either side of the nose, like that. There we go. Try and make them the same if you can. There we go. Fabulous. You can play around with the head position as you go along, but it's going to get a little bit moved around as we go through the process. So now we need to give it some eyeballs, and I'm going to poke it in that eye bulge and waggle the stick around, and I'm going to do the same on the other side. So the eye bulge and make a nice eye socket, and again just waggle the stick around and then soften those edges as well. There we go. Fabulous. So we need some eyeballs. So we've got some white here, and taking small amounts to make two little round balls for eyes, just in case you were wondering what shape an eyeball is. And the T-Rex in the backdrop there has just fallen over. With the warmth of it all, I think. So I'm just going to, there we go, Lad, put you back. So I'm going to make that a little bit smaller, that eyeball. And just pop those in. As I say, if you kind of do it a bit tentatively at first, and then you can take them out more easily as well. If it goes a little bit peculiar, you've got one big eye, one small eye, and just adjust as you go along. So try and keep it as easily off and onable as possible. There we go. So I've got a wide apart eyes like so. Looking good. Now I'm going to use a little bit of that darker brown, that's what we're going to use for the fur as well, and make two pupils, so two tiny balls of clay. Again, like we did with the sloth yesterday, just adding in a little bit of brown pupil, like so. So making a small ball and then splodging it on, pressing it on, and that will then spread it out, increase the size of the eye, with any luck anyway. There we go. Fabulous. A bit not neat at the moment. And again, the same with a little bit of black. Tiny balls of black, really as small as you can go. Little grains of sand, pop those on the front. Try not to spread them around too much. And do the same on the other side. Pop that on. Calder, how are you doing? Nice to have you aboard. Thanks for joining us. So we're camel making, if you hadn't guessed, and I'm just poking camel in the eye, like so. So I've got nice far apart starey eyes. There we go, and we're ready almost. I've forgotten the tail. We need a tail. So let's take a little bit of that body colour, and for the carrot fans out there, we're going to make a kind of little thin wispy carrot, and put that where tails go, on the bum, just above the bum. and work your fingers around and smooth that in. There we go. Not sure if you can hear my stomach rumbling there. Yesterday I was full of nana burps from having salad before I came on, so I thought I won't eat, I'll eat later, and now I've got a rumbling stomach. It's a little insight into life in the clay cave. There we go. And you can give a little bit of a bend to that. So we're going to need some of this brown clay now, and we can start adding some texture and a bit of personality to our camel. So we can take some little bits off, tear a few lumps off, just lay those there, and then I can use them as bits of tufty fur in a bit. So we've got some on the top of the hump. We can give our camel a haircut. Goodness knows I need a haircut. I'm waiting for my clippers to arrive at the moment, so I don't look more and more like Father Christmas. And I'm going to start by making a kind of, I suppose, a carrot again actually for the hair. So we've got this nice head of hair, and I'm going to start with a little fat carrot, like so, and then I'm actually going to have the tail of the carrot going between the ears. So I'm slightly flattening it there. So we're going to end up with a kind of camel quiff, really. So there we go, like that. And pushing it on. Then I'm going to get a sculpting tool and start to squeeze that and press that onto the head. There we go, like so. Working around. And just pushing the clay on. And you can start to add a bit of texture as well. Great, that's quite a good head of hair I've given him there. Looks a little peculiar at this stage. Just going to get rid of that black and white because that's getting in the way. And sticking to his feet, which is not what we want. There we go. Lovely. And this is going to make a little bit more sense when we add the chest piece on as well. So I'm going to take a fairly sizable piece, Elvis the camel. Yeah, it's quite Elvis-y actually. It's quite nice, I think. Yeah. So I'm making another carrot. Carrot fans. And this is going to sit on the front of the chest. And I'm going to push it on. This is going to give a bit of body to the neck as well. So I'm going to put that on the front like so. And then I'm going to start to push it on and build up that. So they have this nice kind of wattly bit on the front. And again, I'm just going to turn it upside down and push and spread some of that clay on. I'm going to start adding lumps of clay now, or flattened parts of clay to go around the neck as well. And I'm just going to add, before I forget, that little inner ear section as well. There we go, that looks nicer. Excellent, so you can start to add bits of fur patches now. And you can do it in sections and then smooth it in as you go. So I'm going to lay on a flat piece around there and then work that in around the back of the head. So you can see, like I'm doing, like I have on mine, I'm going to make a bit of a jawline and smooth in that clay. So you could do this in little pieces, in little pellets, or do it in bigger pieces like I'm doing, and then start to spread that clay around, and it will really start to come together. Try not to squash the eyes like I have. You can always repair them as you go along. Lovely. So we're just going to keep adding fur and texture, and until we're happy with it, really. So at this stage, as I'm adding texture, I would like to throw it open to you all. If you've got any questions, not so much on requests for animals today, because it's going to be a few days before we have another draw, so obviously that's next Friday. But if you've got any questions you'd like to ask, then now is the time. Throw them open to me and I'll try and answer them. George, good afternoon. How are you doing? You've missed all the fun, or most of it. So we're just making camel fur at the moment. You've missed all of the talk of camel toes. So we've done all those. So we're just texturing our camel now. Lovely. So just working my way around. I'm going to add some onto the shoulder as well. And you can be quite splodgy with it as well. And say, add those little pellets of clay. Well, don't worry, George. I will post the video tomorrow at some point, I expect. Depending on how Virtual Pub goes this evening. If you could be an animal, which animal would you be? Says Shona. Well, that's a difficult one. Well, I'm trying to think of what animal looks to have the best life, really. Lions and tigers seem to have quite a hard time of it. Something where I don't have to do a great deal, I think, would be quite nice, really. A bit of sunbathing. Seals, sea lions seem to have quite a nice old life. So maybe that sounds quite good, actually. It's somewhere actually being a bit on the chunky side is celebrated. So I think I'd probably fit in quite well. Glad I should be testing you, George, to see whether you have watched every moment of it as well. If you have missed any of the videos, they are all going up on the YouTube channel. So do subscribe, like and subscribe, as they say, or as Adam Buxton says. There we go, so that's one side. I'm just going to repeat that on the other. Might not do the whole thing, because there's only so much you can watch, really. Shadow would be a hippo. That sounds quite nice. Is that because you can poo in the bath? Or, I don't know. I've been to West Midlands Safari Park and done some work there, and very close. The education rooms are very close to the hippos, and they're quite amazing to watch. Lovely. So I'm just going to do that on the other side, as I say, adding extra bits of fur along the way, getting some texture in there as well. You can use tools for this bit, and as I say, George makes amazing tools. You can check out his Instagram account. And does amazing sculpts. He's saying at the moment he's selling a couple of amazing busts. If you're a fan of Harry Potter and you like house elves, so if you like Creature, then he's done an amazing bust of Creature, and they are available as well for really exclusive limited edition sculpts as well. So do have a look at those. Loads of creative people following this, actually. So really interesting stuff to have a look at. So do take a look at other people as well. Yeah, pebble dash the bathroom. Tailspin, poo action. Yes, hippos do have an amazing way of doing that, of spinning the tail and spreading poo everywhere. So when you're a zookeeper, it's rather frustrating, I think, when you've set up a lovely new pool for your hippo. The first thing they do is go in there and mark the territory and make sure everybody knows that it's theirs, that nobody else is going to want to use it. Camels don't seem to do that so much. Though there's an amazing thing, if you look at video footage of cooked camels, the males have this amazing throat sac, so they get into breeding season, they inflate this throat sac that comes out, a big pink balloon out of their throats and out their mouths, and is hanging around as well, so they're quite weird, very prehistoric looking characters. I'm going to put 2 balls of clay onto the humps. So I'm going to take a ball of clay and I'm going to flatten it into a button shape and add that atop the hump. And again, you can work that in, give it a bit of texture as well. So there we go, we're starting to see our camel come together now. Yeah, Nosy Parkyn does. She doesn't realise quite how much he loves poo chat. But there we go. Try and get some in every episode if we can. It's animals. It's always going to be about poo somewhere. There we go. So we've got those on, and then we're just going to put some back panels on there as well. That is indeed the case, George. I did inflate my throat sac, and that is what drew Nosy Parkyn to me. Yes. So making some flat discs of clay, and I'm going to put those on the back. Now I'm doing this very quickly just to show you the techniques. In fact, I'm just going to do it on this one side, and then I can show you some of the texturing as well. In fact, actually I'm nearly there, so I might as well put on the other side as well. Let's not skimp at this stage. We've come through enough together. I probably owe it to you to complete this camel, really. With the other ones, when I haven't quite finished all the texturing, I do actually finish it afterwards as well. So we do keep the sculpts as well. There we go. Add that one onto the back end as well. You could add some down the legs as well if you wanted to. But they seem to have this kind of hairy thigh, shaggy hair on the thigh area, so the upper leg. So I might just put some on those as well. And then we can add some texture. Now it's quite warm and under these lights, so the camel is a little bit on the wobbly side, but it will soon firm up. When it cools down, the clay gets much firmer, and yeah, much easier to make it stand as well. There we go. There we go. Got a good shot of the face. So if I turn this one round as well, you can have a look, get a better idea of what we're making. I'll do that on the other side as well, just on the front legs. And I think we're pretty much there with all the clay laying, and then we'll just add some texture. Now if you do find that your legs are getting too floppy, then do put some cocktail sticks up there as well. Drive those in. There we go. I think that's looking pretty good now. Quite a proud looking camel. And I'm going to use this tool to add a bit of texture. Might use several tools actually, but this has got a nice shape to it. This is the one that I've been using for everything for years and years, and enjoying using the tools that George has very kindly sent me as well. And you can be quite rough with it, and if you're not happy with it, you can kind of smooth it over and start again. But broad strokes is a good way of doing it, really. Adding a bit of texture to the hair as well. Quite woolly, shaggy hair. They do molt as well at different seasons. There we go. Lovely. And again, on the top of the hump, add a bit of texture. Be quite rough with it. Looks the better for it, I think. Lovely. And around the back end of the camel, you can see it's really starting to look good and shaggy like a camel should. As I say, fingerprints, don't worry about them because you're going to lose a lot of it in this sculpting as well. Use a paintbrush, use a pencil. Cocktail sticks are great for making texture as well. So make your own magic really. You might have your own favourite sculpting tools as well. Here we go, coming together. And there we go, I'm just doing the back end on this side, and that is the texturing complete. I have seen that video, George. It's quite incredible. The strength in a camel is quite phenomenal. Respect the camel. Lovely. I think that's probably where I'll leave it, I think. So make sure our camel can stand. And just adjust the eyes a little bit where I've caught them with the tool along the way. So you can be a bit more careful than me. There we go. And they've got really nice, these far apart eyes. And there we go, just a last little bit on the humps there. And there we have a finished camel. Hopefully you've enjoyed that. Hopefully you've been able to follow along. As I say, spend a bit more time than I have, but you should end up with something that looks rather lovely like that. There we go. A very proud looking camel. As I say, have a go at making a dromedary instead, a one hump if you like as well. That'll make your life a little bit easier. And actually you don't have to worry about putting texture on as well, but this one's been rather fun to make. Hopefully you've enjoyed it too. Please do share your pictures, and I'd really love to see them. Maybe do some animation with them, maybe put them in a sand pit or something like that, put them on a set as well. That'd be absolutely amazing.